we're going to kick it off with our first workshop, which again is brought to us by our friends and partners at Nest. Please join me in welcoming Amisha Patel to our group. Amisha is a social entrepreneur and lawyer whose curiosity and love of adventure has led her down a winding path. After working as a litigator and in venture capital consulting, she went on to build 3 retail brands, all driven by a passion of artisanal textiles, women's empowerment, and art. And she worked with artisan groups from 10 countries around the world. So she's here with us today to talk about forming and funding your business. So I'm going to turn the floor over to her, and thank you, Amisha, for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited. And I just want to let everyone know at any point if you have a question, you can stop me. And I want this to be fairly interactive and helpful for you guys. So it need not just be me lecturing you on how to form a business. If it's not relevant, or if there's something that you feel would be more relevant, go ahead and ask me or shoot it in the comments on the side. I'm happy to have this be a more interactive and engaging session. So with that, just launch into forming and funding your business. So hang on, I'm just gonna play this slideshow. Okay, so congratulations, you've got a business, which I'm sure most of you realize is a lot like having a baby. And depending where you are in your readiness to launch your business, you've probably either done it casually or formally, but you've conducted some market research. So it's seeing, what do other people price these things at? What is the appetite for my product in the market? Where can I best sell it? Am I going to farmers markets on the weekends, or is online the best plan? So that we all end up doing a lot of market research, whether we know it or not, before we feel like what we've got is something we can sell. And 2, you would write a business plan. And I think this is funny. I've started a lot of businesses where I ended up only writing the business plan after I needed it to pitch for funding or something like that. And as far as plans go, I think the one thing you'll realize with starting a business is anything can happen. So before I first started a business, a serial entrepreneur friend of mine said, well, it's great. You might set out to do X, and then as you're going along, it turns into something else. And one of the best skills is to be able to be a little bit flexible with what you're doing, but having a plan in place is super important. And I know it can be intimidating for people. So let me know if you have any questions about writing business plans. I used to do it when I got out of college for all sorts of different businesses. And then step 3, funding your business. And I know, I'm sure in the beginning, we all are sort of self-funding or maybe getting a little help from friends and family. But coming up with a plan to fund your business, which we'll go through in depth the second half of the session, is super important, because I think it's, again, an intimidating step, but it helps you actually focus on the work that you are good at doing, which is your craft, your art, whatever it is that you're trying to sell, and it makes sure that it's sustainable. So that if you do end up getting a massive order, you can handle funding it. And then you choose the location, whether that's virtual or, like I said earlier, farmers markets, etc., in person, a retail store, or B2B, you want to sell into other businesses. And then you choose a business structure, which we're going to go into in more depth. Then you choose a name, if you haven't gotten one already. And one of the things to think about with that is intellectual property. I think a lot of times when you start a business informally, you tend not to think about protecting it, or if you think, I'm not Apple Computers, I don't need a trademark. But as I learned the hard way, when I started my kids' clothing company, I was sued for trademark infringement about a year into it. And it was by a company that, when I had just done a quick Google search, like, are there any clothing companies called Ode? None turned up. And I'd even looked at the trademark office, but she had registered her business soon after I had started mine. And, it turned into a really big mess and I had to change the name. So that's something that you really do want to look at and be careful of. And it's worth the money just to protect your name. Even though you might think your business isn't big enough to do that. It is the second you're in business. And then 7, you would register your business with the state in which you decide to form your business, which will help you get federal and state tax IDs. And that EIN number is going to be really important for transacting in all sorts of ways. And of course, to pay your taxes. And then you just need to figure out whether you need to apply for any special licenses or permits if you're doing in-person selling. That's an example where you might need a license or a permit, and all sorts of other things. I'm not as familiar with what exactly each of your businesses is. So again, if there's a specific question, please let me know. And then 10, you'd be opening a business bank account and getting your business credit card and your business debit card, which is really helpful for tracking all of your expenses. And then also, again, at the end of the day, to pay your taxes. Okay, so any questions so far? Everybody good? Okay. Okay, next, we're going to go through corporate form. And basically, it's how you want to structure your business. And so you see a lot of business names, and then next to them, there might be LLC or INC. And that is the corporate form of that business. And each one really offers you a different set of advantages, and then sometimes drawbacks in the form of more admin or tax considerations, flexibility. And so when you're setting out to do your corporate form, again, you want to think a few steps ahead of where you might be right now. And the main things you want to think about there are the number of partners that you have, the number of shareholders you might want, and the different types of funding that you are going to seek. And tax considerations are important. So I sort of went through that already, but I'm going to leave that there for now, and then we can go through all the different forms. So the oldest one, the most familiar is proprietorship, and that means there's just no separation between the business and the owner. So the business would be me, Amisha Patel, and it's great because it does have less complexity. It's really easy and inexpensive for you to set up. You, the individual, would have like complete control, and then profits are just taxed like your individual income taxes. But the drawbacks of that are unlimited personal liability, and it makes it really difficult for you to raise capital from outside investors. And it really limits you in terms of growth and your business lifespan. And again, like something to consider, that I'll use that example of my kids' clothing company, Ode. Had it not been an LLC, when I got sued for $1 million, it would have been suing me. So that can be really frightening, and something I think that we often don't think about. But being in the US, it's important to consider things like that. Then the next is a limited liability corporation, and it provides the limited liability of a corporation, so like a fictional entity that's not you, but it allows for more flexible management and pass-through taxation. So basically, when you file your taxes with an LLC, you'll file your individual taxes, and then you'll get a different schedule that's a K-1. And that's all the business losses and profits taxed separately. And there's no double taxation on anything. So the cons, It's less formal and less prestigious than a corporation, and it can be a little bit complicated if the members of your LLC, so if you want to say add an investor as a member of the LLC, then you have to redo all the documents and add him in, and it can be a little bit tricky. The LLC is a pretty decent option for, especially if you're just starting out. Then there's the C Corp, and that's what we're most familiar with in terms of a lot of the large corporations we see transacting in business today. So that would be the INC after the name of a company. And they're separate legal entities from their owners. So they offer that liability protection. And then they're subject to corporate income tax. So this is suitable if you plan to take your company public or seek a lot of outside funding. And again, sometimes we think like, oh, you know what? I'm just making blankets. This isn't going to be something, but that's a lot of times how big companies start. And if you hear the stories of retail companies, oftentimes the founder is like, I was making one Pima cotton sweater, and now they've got a giant retail brand. So, you should shoot for the moon with that. So think about it when you're doing your corporate form. The pros are limited liability for the owners, easier to raise capital because you can sell shares of stock, and you can have an unlimited number of shareholders. And then also, I'm going to go through the next form, which is an S Corp, and in that, preferred stock isn't available. Everyone just has common stock. And then an S Corp, it was created to avoid the double taxation of C Corp. So it's somewhere in between an LLC and a C Corp. So they pass corporate income losses and deductions and credits to the shareholders for federal tax purposes. It's suitable for small businesses, and you still get that limited liability protection and can attract investors through the issuance of stocks. But you're limited to 100 shareholders, all of whom have to be US citizens or residents, and there's more formalities and regulations compared to an LLC. And then there's something called a B Corp, and that requires getting a certification that your company considers that make a positive impact on society. And it could be environmental, it can be diversity, it can be gender-based. There's lots of different reasons that you can qualify for being a socially responsible business. And the idea is it's still running as a business, but it's doing good. And that's one way of looking at it. And that can actually help you get all sorts of different types of funding and different opportunities, but it does require a pretty rigorous certification process, and then reporting requirements that can be time consuming and not always worth it for what you're trying to do. And then I don't know if anyone here is interested in doing a nonprofit, which is a 501c3 status. That there's no owners, and you can't technically own it. So if you want to set up something because you're supporting a good cause and just want to protect your personal assets, like this came up recently for a friend of mine. She is trying to sell her friend, an artist who passed away, to sell his artwork and then donate that money to artist support networks in Haiti. And so she didn't want to set up a business, an LLC. And so she's going to try to use one of our friends' nonprofit structures and forums to receive the money for that, because she's not planning on, doing it beyond that. And it's tax exempt, and then also gives you access to public and private grants. The cons there, you do have to have a board of directors. There's a lot of admin, and there's a lot of strict rules around it in terms of record keeping and holding meetings. There's also price or application and filing fees. So again, like something to consider, and a B Corp is sort of the for-profit version of a nonprofit. And then I put it in here just in case, but really limited liability partnerships are more for professional services firms, like law firms and accounting firms. But you will see it. It is a corporate form. Um, and then I think like just depending where you guys are in the process, when you're trying to decide which corporate form, I think I did not mention it. There are some really easy ways. Like if you go on LegalZoom, they will put together your corporate papers, and all you'll pay is the state filing fee. So I would consider some of those things like LegalZoom or Zen Business. The Small Business Association website actually is really rich with resources and helping you through each different step, even if it's applying for a loan. Small Business Association has a lot of resources around forming a company, and can help hold your hand through all of it. But LegalZoom does as well. So just depends. So before we go into funding, I just wanted to stop and take a second and ask everybody if all of that made sense and if there's any specific questions you had with where you might be in your particular journey of business formation.
I just want to share a comment from Sarah in the chat. She just said, thank you for the nonprofit info. She is starting two and already in the process of starting the first one. And so I'm a little starstruck with that. And so I just wanted to say thank you for including the nonprofit. Sarah will use that.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Well.
Yeah. And it's the nonprofit process. Congratulations, Sarah, because it does get confusing,
And we're going
does either one?
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just reading the questions. Yeah. Does either one help the trademark process make it any easier? No, the trademark process it seems intimidating, and I know I'm a lawyer, so for me it's not. But if you go to the trademark website, you can actually do it for the most part yourself, and I would just have somebody look it over for you. But you would file also if you're not ready to, like, if you don't have the business yet, even if you don't have the form, you can file the intent to use as an individual. And I've done that. Actually, for most of the trademarks that I've registered, I own them. I didn't even have the corporation own them because when I first started, it was just me and I didn't have the corporate form. So, I would go to the US PTO site for that. And then a single member LLC, am I still held liable? Like, no, you're not. Once you've formed an LLC, you get that liability protection. Okay. Any other questions, guys? You're all good. Has anybody actually registered a trademark?
I have. This is Sarah.
Oh, hi, Sarah. You have, and was there anything that you want to share about the trademark process that you thought was difficult, or how did you do it?
You just have to protect yourself and do your research. So you're going to need to look up your state's information and register and file with them, and then follow up with the federal registers and file with them. So it's a process and it's separate for each. So if you fail to follow that, you open yourself up later on for someone to come and take over because they already have ownership. So just be careful and take care of that. So.
Okay, cool. Is there a difference in taxing between an LLC and a sole proprietorship? Yeah, there is. The sole proprietorship, it just goes to you as your income. And the LLC allows you to, you have your own personal income, and then the business losses and profits all get put on a separate schedule. And then you can kind of offset a loss on your personal income with the business. With the sole proprietorship, it just passes through. Okay, the first year I have to file a sole proprietor. People gave me 1099. Hang on, I'm just reading this question. I think I have trademark groundings for Alex by an LLC. Okay, yeah, people gave me 1099. Yeah, that was, so when you do anything that's not a sole proprietorship, now that you're an LLC, you have to file a K1 schedule. Filing the K1 form different from the Schedule C. I'm not sure about that, guys. I can look that up and like get back to you. But for like the one thing that I really did not like doing was my business taxes, and I felt it was worthwhile to hire an accountant because he also always helped me figure out ways to offset expenses and things like that. And he wasn't that expensive. I think he did 3 K1 schedules because we had 3 partners in our LLC for $600. So it's sort of worth it, and what he ended up saving us. Allison, do you have, oh, okay. Allison, but you're an LLC, right? Oh, and there's no need to apologize. I think if you're an LLC, then you do need to file that K1. And you should be okay. Like it's not that complicated. It would just be a different statement than your normal tax form. Okay. Any other questions on that sort of trademark, naming, forming a company? And what have you guys tended to use to form your LLCs? LegalZoom or? Right. Okay. All right, cool. So then I'm going to move forward to, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, Desiree has her hand up. So Desiree, if you can unmute, feel free to ask your question.
Sorry.
Thank you. I just had a quick question. I operate as a sole prop now, but I was kind of looking into switching it to an LLC. So say I switch it in the middle of the year, would I just file both the next year, or how does that work?
Oh, I don't know. That is a good question. And I'm assuming that you would file both because it would be for the period of time until the LLC was formed. So if you're forming it sort of midway through the year, I'm assuming you would have to do both. Or there's a chance, and don't quote me on this, but I could see also in a world that then depending on when that tax year started, so it could all be passed through to the LLC. Like how many months of income would you have had by the time the LLC?
Thank you.
I think we're good to move on, but I'm taking notes and I am already starting to find you some more resources on everything that you guys are asking about. So I will try to get some answers to all these questions for us. So thank you all for giving your questions.
Yeah, and thank you. And sorry that I can't specifically answer certain tax questions. I feel like that's one of my let somebody else handle it because I don't want to be liable. I'm probably the lawyer in me that decides to pass that on. Okay, cool. So let's go into funding. I'm going to go through various ways of that you can fund your business, and some of them will be more relevant than others. But again, just stop me, and if there's anything that you have questions about or where you're struggling, let me know. So one of the first ways that I think most businesses start is self-financing. It's the easiest and quickest money to secure, and it eliminates the complexity of adding partners or any shareholders. And you only have to really consider your own aspirations. And none of it gets diluted. So all of it goes back to you, like any profits that you make. The con is it really does magnify your risk, because I think one of the things that I'm pretty sure Lily will be getting into this is, as entrepreneurs, artisans, artists, we tend not to value all of our time correctly. So if you're thinking, like, I'm going to give an example that's like, I make jewelry, and I will look at like the material. I'll tend to look at the materials that it takes to make the ring, perhaps the time, but I won't be valuing my time correctly, because I won't be saying, oh, instead I could be making $50 an hour doing something else. It's $150. So depending on that, you have to value your time. And then I'm a photographer, so I actually photograph all my products and then spend time putting them up. And if you were to basically price something and take all the time and resources that you put into it, and if you had to hire somebody to do that, that's a good way of looking at how to value your work. And so one of the things with self-financing is you're already taking a big risk with your time and your energy and your effort. And so then to put whatever cash you have into it, doubles that risk, because you're already exposed to a lot of risk by putting in your time and effort. That said, like, self-financing in the beginning, I think is totally fine and acceptable. And then a lot of times it does limit the growth of the venture, because you will end up looking at it as like, I can only make 5 things because now I've sold these, and say I made $500, then I can only make so many more because this is the only money that I have, even if you're taking what you're earning from the business and putting it back into it. So sometimes it's really good to just think about a 1-year plan, a 2-year plan, a 3-year plan, and then how much money you have as runway to fund it in different scenarios. Like, say I get a really big order, and to fulfill it, I'm going to need to hire somebody to help me make these things. What does that look like? So that's one of the things to also think about with self-financing. Like, you also get limited because you end up doing a lot of work in addition to using up a lot of your cash to fund it. The next way, I think a lot of people don't like debt, but it can be pretty advantageous. Like, you could get a small business loan, or take a loan from, friends or family that's at favorable rates, hopefully. And it allows you to retain total control of what you're going to do to an extent. Like, you don't take a loan and then go on a vacation, but there's not somebody saying, hey, I'm investing in you and I want to see you do this, which can be really frustrating when you're first starting a business, to have to be mindful of what an investor wants you to do, and the direction the investor wants you to take. So debt helps you not have that. There's tax advantages because the interest payments are deductible. And it is pretty easy planning, especially for something like a production cycle. Like, if I'm going to need this much money in month 1, so that I can secure all the materials for my project or for my product, and then I'm going to be selling it in month 4, then debt can really just act as a bridge before you get that revenue in from what you're making. And the cons, you've got to qualify. You could be viewed as high risk by potential investors because your debt would have to be paid before any profit was made. And then if you put any, if it required collateral, it could put the business assets at risk, in the case that you defaulted. Then there's angel investors. And an angel investor, in terms, it's usually a wealthy individual provides capital for a business startup, usually in exchange for debt that would be converted into shares or ownership equity. And They usually give support to like startups at the initial moments when most investors aren't prepared to back them. So the pros, it's usually personal, like the angel cares about what you're doing and wants to support it. It's less risky because you don't have to pay it back unless you actually make profits. And an angel can actually cover what you need. Like you might just need $10,000. An angel can give that to you. Angels invest up to even, 100,000, $1 million. And they will often not take their money out. And so it will help grow your business. And then the cons is a lot of times you don't have control. And it can ruin a relationship. So if you are taking money from a good friend or a family member or even just somebody who believes in you and then you don't pay it back, it could end up, creating friction. I think I've met a lot of business owners who feel too much pressure taking money from friends and family or an angel investor because it highlights, entrepreneurship is just really an exercise in failure. You try things, you fail. You try things, you fail, and it's about getting back up and doing them again, and trying it a different way. And I think when you feel you've let somebody down, you already feel bad enough when you let yourself down. It can be really tricky to balance that. But again, going back to some of the things that I said about self-financing, where you end up selling yourself short or you're not, letting your business grow, angel investment really does give you the chance to relax a little bit and focus on building the business instead of just like going from like month to month with what you need to get it going. It can really give it room to breathe and grow. Then another popular method of funding is crowdfunding, and that helps you raise small amounts of money from a large number of people. Now, the thing about crowdfunding that I'll say, so the pros and cons, I've listed them out there. You don't have to give up equity. You test the market for your product. Fundies finance the product. Momentum's driven by the herd mentality. So it ends up helping you get a lot of customers that you might not have otherwise gotten. Because they connect to your story or your mission. Oh, sorry, guys. Okay. Yeah, they connect to your story or your mission. It helps to build your market, and it has a bit of this network effect. So there's social sharing. If people are really excited about something or your campaign, they'll spread the word. It's a good opportunity to get press. And I'll say from I've done a Kickstarter before and I've done an Indiegogo before. Kickstarter I did for a hoodie company I had, which was like hoodies with interchangeable collectible hoods designed by street artists. So it was really a good way to get people who were fans of the street artists involved, and kind of, fun to start building this movement before we did it. But it was an entirely separate effort from then actually making the hoodies and bringing them to market and having to try to sell to businesses. And it was like taking on a different job as well. So you have to do a really successful crowdfunding campaign, you basically need to have a lot of the people who are going to buy your product lined up before you hit launch on that campaign. And even things like press and stuff like that, you should have those things lined up as well, to make sure that you take advantage of those 30 days that the campaign is running and you get as much exposure as possible. So, get it going as a vehicle for your friends and family to support you, by buying your products in advance or anything like that. But if you want to make the most of it and get strangers connected to your product, you're going to have to put in the same work that you would to promote your products on a website or on social media. The cons is it doesn't find you investors. And I'll say that's, that might not be true because it could find you an investor, in that somebody could see the product, hear your story, and it's basically like you're doing a pitch to, all sorts of people. And you don't know who's going to see it. But like I said, I went through, it's a lot of effort. There are a lot of people on crowdfunding things who never give you a product. So a lot of people are now skeptical of it. And again, it's that visibility of failure. So you're seeing it like, have you reached your goal? And you can kind of overcome that by setting a slightly lower goal than what you actually want. But it does feel like, I always used to, like, every day felt like, okay, I have to send out the alert, like, remember to contribute. And it's just a lot of work, and it's a lot of emotional labor to kind of put yourself out there so much, in so many different ways. So it's one of the things to consider too, how much vulnerability you have in starting your business and putting your art out there to, become self-reliant with it. And these are more for like tech startups, incubators and accelerators. I just included it because it is a funding source, and you might actually not think of it, but there are all sorts of incubator programs for retail businesses, for artisan businesses, craft businesses, and looking into them could be really great because it gives you all of these resources and training, just like this workshop is doing. And it can give you money too. So looking into it, I remember when I was doing Katrinka project, which were these artisanal handbags that I was working with all these artisan groups on, we got into an incubator program. I'm based in New York, and it was at Brooklyn Navy Yard, and it was for startup retail brands. And the amount of resources we got, and also the studio space that we got, was so incredible and really helpful for bringing our business forward to the next level. It's also important to do, as you guys are doing now, networking with other people in your space, because you can just learn from each other. You can learn so much from each other. And I think that really can't be discounted. And then the next level would be like impact investment funds and venture capital. And that is when you actually, are at a point where you want to launch and you have high growth potential. And basically impact investment funds, similar to what we were saying with B Corp, like they're looking for not just financial returns, but are you giving back to your community? Are you employing, a underemployed segment of society? There's all sorts of other things that you could be doing that has a social impact that can attract a different type of investor. So a lot of the work that I've done is working with women artisan groups, and benefiting girls' education initiatives. And so the variety of funds, there was a lot of like women funding women, both angel investors and impact funds that were looking to find businesses like ours. So that's what I would say. And I'll open it up again for questions, and it could be on all sorts of things. But I hope that was helpful for you guys.
I know I learned a lot. Like, just so much that I'm just so grateful that you've been here and able to answer these questions off the cuff like this. I learned a lot.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer more, because I know that this stuff can be really intimidating. And I'm excited for, like, I would love to hear more about your businesses, and I don't know that we have time for that, but to the extent we do have time and anybody wants to talk about their business and where they're at in this part of the challenge, I'd love to hear it, and also have all of us support you, because I'm sure everyone can learn from example. Like, that's all business school is case studies, and it's for a reason. Like, you really do learn as you go and what you're doing. And I can't emphasize how important it is to share knowledge too. So join as many groups as you can, and help everybody.
Okay, Amanda has a question in the chat about the new, is it finance LLC reporting requirements? Do you have any information about that?
On that, Amanda, I'm sorry.
I'm adding it to my list, Amanda. I'll get it. I'll try to find something for you. And just to let everyone know, we do have some presenters on the board that will go into like tax payments for artists. I don't even know what like the language is, but we do have some of that coming up for you guys.
Cool. And you guys are, I don't know if Jess, if you guys coordinate this, but I know here there's a great group called Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts. And I think some of those programs could be really helpful for lots of different issues that come up for artists. I know a lot of my friends who are painters use them, actors, and artisan groups and small businesses too.